Greetings guys, gals, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. Presently in London, there is a heat wave and I feel like I am dying. But there is something that I really needed to talk about with you all today, and so here I am to talk about it with you. The other day, I opened my burner TikTok account and was immediately bombarded with one of the most bafflingly frustrating TikToks I have ever seen, which then led me to go and deep dive into this specific account. And I have so much to say about it, and so today I am going to make it everyone's problem. And that account is this woman who goes by Tenin ABT. And she is a black woman who has immigrated from somewhere in Africa. I don't believe she said what country in Africa, or if she has, I missed it, to the US about 20 years ago. And now all of her content that she makes revolves around how white people in America are the real victims and black people have it good. So naturally, I have so much to say about this. I am obviously a white person, and so today I'm going to be responding to her videos about how I am a victim, and explaining all the reasons why I am not a victim. I'm not a victim. I didn't think this was a conversation that we would be having to have today, but here we are. Today, that's what we're doing. Before we get into it though, I would like to take a moment to tell you about today's sponsor that is all about empowerment and equality, which is something that this woman hates, but I love, and that is Cheeks. Now, I have spoken about Cheeks before, but it has been quite some time since I have spoken about them, and also quite some time since I have checked them out myself. And I am so pleased to see that they are not only still incredible, but they are even more incredible than I remember them being. In case you have forgotten, Cheeks is an online sexual wellness platform that focuses on creating safe and inclusive content for people of all shapes, sizes, ethnicities, sexualities, desires, etc. to explore and feel safe exploring. This includes erotic film, which always has an intimacy coordinator on set and is created often by women for the female gaze, as well as including so many different body types and having a real focus on inclusion and diversity, so there is something for everyone there to enjoy. There is also a pleasure academy where you can get some sex education, which is often very lacking in a school sense, and a lot of people have a lot of questions about sex and pleasure and have a lot of self-discovery to do, and there is a place to do that on Cheeks, including a new edition called Spice It Up, which focuses on communication and turn-ons and aftercare across a very wide range of diverse relationships, which is something very important that I think a lot of people would really benefit from learning more about and being able to feel less anxious around sharing these things. It is a platform that hopes to make people feel more comfortable and empowered within their own sexuality by providing a safe space to explore. If you are curious to try Cheeks for yourself, which I cannot recommend enough, then you can use the link in my description with the code TheQueerKiwi7, and you will get 7 days free when you select an annual subscription, and you can cancel any time during these 7 days, so there is no need to worry about it. You can try it out with unlimited access and see how much you love it and how much it helps you, and then decide if you want to carry on from there. Thank you so much, Cheeks, for sponsoring today's video, and I hope that you all enjoy. Something that I think is important to note about this woman before we take a dive into all her content is that, as I said, she is an immigrant. She moved to the US from somewhere in Africa 20 years ago. I just think that that's important to note because Black people who come from a longer line in the US have a different history and a different culture because they had, their heritage wiped out and taken from them. And so they've had to create their own culture. And I just think that's important to note because I think it does impact her views and the way she talks about all of this, and also allows her to be ignorant and claim that she is allowed to have these thoughts and she speaks on behalf of all Black people despite not actually being in the same position as the Black people she is speaking on behalf of, right? Yeah, and that's a problem. Okay, now that I've said all of that, I'm going to share with you the first TikTok of hers that I saw where she shares her opinion on white privilege.
White people, let's talk about your white privilege. Are you all still waiting on your white privilege starter pack to be delivered? Because it must be stuck in transit. How long have you been waiting now? Since birth? All your lives? Because I still see a whole lot of you clocking in on Monday to Friday like the rest of us. Sometimes even on the weekends, working 9 to 5 or 9 to 9, stressed out, juggling multiple jobs just to make ends meet, complaining about these high grocery prices, stressed about utility bills going up every month, whispering, I need a vacation every 12 minutes. At this point, your privilege package must be stuck in customs, lost in transit, or delivered to the wrong address because you all are clearly out here fighting life just like the rest of us. And that is not privilege.
I don't think you understand what privilege means. This is always such a frustrating argument that these people love to make. It's like, well, white people are struggling. There are white people who struggle, so therefore white privilege isn't real. That's not the point. That's not what this means. That's not how this works. No one is saying that all white people are well off and all Black people suffer. That is not what white privilege is. That is not what we're saying. Privilege is such a tiered and layered thing because there are so many crossovers and intersectionality, right? Like there is male privilege, there is white privilege, there's so many differences. So like being a Black woman versus a white woman versus a Black man versus a white, there are different layers and crossovers, and having money versus not having, there's a lot that goes on in this. This is not, for lack of a better term, it's not black and white. Right? It just isn't black and white. For example, what this means, okay, is that if I were to go up for a job, right? I am applying for a job and the person I am competing for this job with is a Black woman, I am more likely to get that job purely because I am white. That Black woman could be more qualified than me, but I would still be more likely to get that job. Not 100% of the time, but a lot of the time, in a lot of instances, people just assume, whether subconsciously or consciously, that white people are more educated, that we are more civil. There are so many just subconscious biases that exist that mean that I, as a white person, am more likely to get that job than a Black person just because I'm white. Even if we come from the exact same background, we went to the same school, we have the same degree, all of that, I'm still more likely. That is white privilege. Being treated differently because of your skin color, it doesn't mean white people don't suffer, and it doesn't mean there aren't any well-off Black people. It just means, on average, white people are treated better, and Black people are treated worse. If you get two people on the same social standing and in the same position, there is going to be a difference. And there's likely going to be a difference in how hard they had to work to get there. It's such a multifaceted thing that you can't just look at from a surface level and be like, well, everyone struggles so no one is oppressed. That's not how that works. There is so many ways to look at it and so many statistics that you can look at and so much social behavior that you can see that enforces the fact that these tiers of oppression and privilege are very real and very alive. It is not something you can just look at and be like, well, everyone struggles so no one is oppressed. That's not how this works. Next up, we have this one, which is sort of along similar lines to white privilege and her just not understanding how anything works at all in the most frustrating way possible. And that's this.
Imagine the reaction to White History Month. Imagine the headlines over an all-white scholarship. Imagine the outrage over white entertainment television. Imagine the backlash if white-owned businesses were openly promoted just because they were white-owned. You already know what would happen. Media outrage, cancel culture, but swap the words and suddenly it's different. Then it's called empowerment. Then it's called representation. Everybody gets told to be proud of who they are. But the minute a white person says, "I'm proud to be white in America," it's not taken as pride. It's racism. You are expected to feel guilty for a skin color you did not choose. Blamed for history you did not live. Told your identity is the only one that must come with shame attached.
That's the point though, isn't it? Because that's how it already is. Well, imagine if people had White History Month. Imagine if they were like, this is a white-owned business. Imagine if people were like, these are movies made by white people. Did you know that 80% of Hollywood movies are made by white people? And just to add there, 73% of those are made by white men. And considering only 60% of the US is white, that's not a fair number. That's not a balanced number. If 80% of something is made by white people, why the fuck would you need to be like, white people made this? Like, yeah, we fucking know. We know they did because they make everything. And you don't need to advertise the fact that these movies have an all-white cast or have like a white lead character, because only 25% of Hollywood movies have more than one person of color in the core cast. That's not 2 black people. That's not 2 Latino people. That is 2 people of color, 2 non-white people in the core cast. Less than 25% of Hollywood movies have that. So yeah, it's gonna be advertised because there is 40% of your country is not white, and yet there's like rarely more than one of them in the lead cast of a movie. Talking about the importance of representation and diversity in things such as film is really important, because it means that if we are putting a focus on that and an emphasis on that, and like more people are engaging with content that is actively being more diverse, it means they are going to continue to create more diverse content, right? And so we need to put an emphasis on it, because if we don't, because people are racist, then they're gonna stop doing it and they're gonna stop producing that content, unfortunately. And it's so important to have, because it means that these younger kids, these younger people of color are going to see that they are able to be movie stars too. They can see that their dreams are possible. They can widen their perspective and understand that there are roles for them and there is space for them. Where previously, if you're only seeing movies with white people in it, these kids, they don't see themselves anywhere, right? And there's also like no encouragement for them to be anywhere. And it just normalizes the fact that people of color exist, because unfortunately, for a long time, they were kind of treated like they didn't, right? And it's a good thing to celebrate the fact that they are now visible and actively being celebrated, because they haven't been for a long time, whereas white people have always been. Like, that's the difference? Yeah? You get it? Okay? And speaking about pride and being proud and like celebrating black people versus not white people, once again, it's because we kind of always have been celebrating white people, and they've always been there loud at the front. But the difference here is white people haven't done anything really to be celebrated and to be proud of, right? Like, what have we done to be proud of? Yeah. And this is where I'm gonna stop for a second and say that it is okay to be proud to be American. It is okay to be proud to be Australian or English or German or Swedish. Like, you can be proud of where you are from. That is fine. You can totally be proud of that. But you can't be proud of being white because that is being proud of the actions of white people. Like, being white doesn't have culture because it's not a culture. It's not an ethnicity. It is a skin color, right? Like, you are a black woman, yes, but you know where you're from. I don't know where you're from because I don't think that you have shared it, but you can be proud to be X nationality. You can be proud to be from there, right? However, in the US, Black Americans don't have their heritage. They don't know where they are from. There is a mix of people that came from different places around Africa. They can't be proud of an African nationality that they don't know what it is, that was taken away from them, right? And they are American, but they are treated differently to white Americans. So they are proud to be black because they have no other term to use for themselves because that was taken away from them. And I think this ties very nicely into this next TikTok.
Every white or pale person in America does not come from some rich colonial bloodline. The main actors responsible for a large share of overseas colonial expansion between the 15th to 20th centuries, especially in the Americas, Africa, and Southeast Asia, were mainly the United Kingdom, France, Spain, Portugal, and the Netherlands. Irish, Italian, Slav, Jews, and many other European groups were discriminated against and were not even considered white under certain racial systems at different points in history. Large parts of Eastern Europe and the Balkans spent centuries suffering through invasions, famine, occupation, war, and political oppression. Ireland suffered under British rule. Poland was partitioned and erased from maps for periods of history. Millions of ordinary Europeans lived in poverty with little power, wealth, or influence.
I'm confused a little bit because what do you mean? You just said that white Americans do not all come from a colonial bloodline because colonizers came from Britain and other European places. How do you think they got to the US? That is so contradicting. The white people in the US, the core of them, the foundation of how white people became to be 60% of the US, is because they are descendants of colonizers from here, from Britain. What do you mean? Are you trying to say that white people have always been in the US? Are you trying to say that it wasn't colonized? I don't understand your point. It makes no sense. What did you think you were doing here? I am confused. That not making any sense aside, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant because you are talking about racism in the US. You cannot then talk about Europe as though that is at all relevant to racism in the US because it is different. You can't be like, you say that white people aren't oppressed. Well, in some parts of Europe they are. Okay, but you're not in some parts of Europe, are you? No. So it's not relevant. How white people are treated outside of the US does not make any difference to how they are treated in the US. You can't look at different places and then say they have it hard there, so that means they have it hard here too. No, that is not true. That is not how this works. The way that race is viewed in the US versus elsewhere is talked about a lot by people who aren't American, because it's really fucking weird how Americans do view race very much just as skin color. You are white or you are black or you are brown or you are Asian. And that's it. And they mix skin colors in really weird ways too and separate people in strange ways. And it is all done based off of skin color and nothing more. And that is so much of how they view and treat race. And it doesn't function like that in places like Europe, as you said here, right? There is like cultural discrimination amongst different ethnicities and people from different places who are all white. That is something that does occur and does happen. You are correct. That's not an issue there. That's not relevant to any of your points. We will talk about that where it is relevant, and like have that conversation around race and xenophobia and like how people are mistreated based on where they are from and like immigrant status, etc. Like we will have that conversation. We have that conversation. It is not relevant to you and the conversation that you are having though. So you can't bring that up as a point. You can't be like, racism towards white people is real because it's real over there, so therefore it's real here. No, it is about the laws. It is about the social conditioning and the social structures. And your country is built in this way, and other countries are built in a different way. And you cannot use that to talk about how your social structures work because they aren't the same. And you cannot just take that and pretend that applies to you. The way it's working over there doesn't impact you. That doesn't matter. It's not relevant. So it doesn't make for a good argument. So in short for that one, culture matters, history matters, and geography matters. And you can't just be mixing it up all willy-nilly because it doesn't work. She then has a TikTok that has sort of similar energy but slightly different, and that is talking about slavery. And this, once again, is so frustrating because it is so disregarding of history and culture and geography and relevance. So let's have a watch and all shake our heads together.
Black people, I hear some of you say there were no white slaves. You have to ignore the truth to keep that victim story alive. But here's the truth. Slavery didn't just go one way. Yes, Africans were enslaved by Europeans. But history also shows that for centuries, Africans enslaved Europeans and even Americans too. It's the side of the story history barely whispers about. From the 1500s to the 1800s, North African pirates, known as Barbary pirates, captured sailors and travelers from Europe and the US. They sold them into slavery in places like Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli. Thousands were forced into brutal labor, beaten, starved, and held for ransom, living the same nightmare, just with the roles reversed. So remember, slavery wasn't one-sided. It crossed races, nations, and centuries. And when we tell the whole story, we see the truth. Human cruelty never had just one color.
Okay, but once again, how is that relevant to what you're talking about? How is this relevant to like why you vote for Trump? You know, like it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense because how you're not talking about white people in North Africa. You were talking about white people in the US. And those are not the same thing, right? I don't know about the like racial structure and such in North Africa. I am not educated on that. However, it doesn't really matter in this point. It doesn't matter that white people were slaves in other places because that doesn't affect how either white or black people are treated in the US. What happened in the US is relevant to how they are treated in the US. And yes, sometimes what they do in other places is relevant to how they're treated in the US. That is true. However, not how white people are treated. That doesn't make a difference, except for Jewish people, because anti-Semitism is a thing and has been a thing for a very long time. Slavery and such existing with white people being the victims to it is obviously terrible because slavery in general is a terrible thing, and I'm sorry to everyone who has ever been affected by slavery. But slavery that occurred outside of the US that wasn't dictated by people in the US doesn't impact the social structures within the US. The reason talking about Black Americans being descendants of slaves is an important conversation, and the reason reparations are asked for is because it is relevant to how Black people are treated in the US. What happened outside of that doesn't impact this fact. White Americans being taken as slaves hundreds of years ago does not impact their social standing within the US now. Black people being taken and used as slaves does impact Black people in the US now. There is still ramifications left over from that, right? And that is why it's such an important conversation, because when slavery was abolished, yeah, Black people were no longer kept as slaves, which isn't entirely true. For one, there is still slavery. It's just called the prison system, but that is a separate conversation for another time. These Black people who were liberated were not really given anything, right? They weren't suddenly equal. They weren't suddenly accepted by society and given the same as everyone else was. They were forced out to like fend for themselves in a world that fucking hated them and treated them badly because they were slaves, right? So they like formed community and developed their own culture, and they did so much and formed community and had to live sort of isolated because of segregation for a really long time. Yeah, they were not able to go to the same schools and get the same educations and be given the same jobs, so they didn't have as much money, and they were never given anything, right? The slave owners, the people who like owned them, didn't give them anything. They didn't have to like pay them for the labor that they had used them for such a long time. They were just sent out with absolutely nothing. And then so even as generations moved on, and as, you know, segregation ended and Black people started getting more like the right to vote, and segregation ending and being able to exist in the same spaces and like have more jobs, etc., like they still had less. Yeah, they didn't have as much. They are still living in areas where their education wasn't able to be as good because they didn't have the money, and they couldn't get the money because they couldn't get as good of an education because they were in this space. They were trapped in this space that they had been forced into as a result of slavery. It's why you look at like the socioeconomic inequality, and so many people who are below the poverty line are people of color, are Black people, because they were never given the opportunity to break away from that. That is why there are scholarships for Black people. It is because it gives the opportunity to people who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity to be able to go and get a higher education. They are equally as educated, if not more, than white people at a different school and who were born with more money. They just don't have the opportunity to go because they can't afford it, because their family was never given the opportunity to earn that money, because they've been kept in this position where they've never been granted those opportunities. And that is why those scholarships are so important, because it gets them out of that and allows them to get higher education and better jobs and move out of that. And then, you know, it just helps give something back to people who were taken advantage of and never given anything to say sorry for that. And that is what reparations are, right? It's like, for the sake of this conversation, let's pretend I'm American, all right? I don't own a slave. I've never owned a slave. My parents didn't own a slave, nor did my grandparents, but a few generations back, maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. I benefit from that, right? I benefit from the labor that slaves did at that time. I benefit from what they produced. I benefit from the money they made for the economy. I benefit from that. Whereas the descendants of slaves, Black Americans, they face the consequences of that. They weren't slaves. Their parents weren't slaves. Their grandparents weren't. Maybe their great-grandparents were. And they've done nothing. They were not slaves, and yet they still suffer the consequences of that ancestry. So they suffer despite not having done anything, and I benefit despite not having done anything. So to equal that out a little bit, it makes sense and is fair for me to give them something. Should I be in a position to be able to do that? Because I am in the position that I am in, because they are in the position that they are in, right? You get it? Does that make sense? Because that's what reparations are. That's what it's for. Like, no, it's not my fault, but it's also not their fault, right? Being made aware of your privilege is not the same as being told you have to feel guilty and ashamed. You don't have to feel guilt. You don't have to feel shame. Just acknowledge your privilege. And if you feel as though you are in the position that you are in because you have walked on Black people, taken advantage of them, pushed them down, do something to try to make up for that. Yeah? I don't live feeling guilty and ashamed every day, because I educate myself and I do what I can and what, you know? Ultimately, at the end of the day, like many things, it all revolves around money. It all just revolves around money. Everything always does. It always revolves around money, and racism is one of those things. This is one of those things that revolve around money. And she actually has something to say about money that I find really interesting.
Disease is profitable. Inflation is profitable. Disaster is profitable. War is profitable. Every crisis is a cash grab. Men drive the wars. Men sign the orders. Men write the policies. Men write the shortages. Men manufacture poverty. Men blame the poor for being crushed by it. Every crisis makes them richer. Pandemic, war, inflation, they don't suffer. They profit. Your suffering is not an unfortunate side effect. It is part of the business model. Wars don't start themselves. Men in suits sign the orders while other men's sons come home in boxes. Poverty isn't an accident. It is policy written by men who have never missed a meal. They preach scarcity while hoarding enough to end world hunger 10 times over. Scarcity for you, surplus for them. Men rig the economy, gamble with entire lives, and call it the market. Humans die every day because of their decisions, policies, and they reward themselves with a yacht. Men dream up the atrocities, men engineer the pain, men design the systems that bleed the world dry. Man is greedy, man is selfish, man is self-centered to the bone. Not robots, not aliens, not the devil, man.
And once again, I am left just so confused because, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, exactly. Men and capitalism is the fucking problem. That is the problem. That is the root of all fucking evil. Men are the cause of all of our problems. Capitalism is at the core of everything. Greed, wealth, capitalism, men. Yep. So true. So why did you vote for Donald Trump? I'm so confused. I saw this before I saw her talking about voting for Trump. But after I saw this, I scrolled and I saw this TikTok.
Donald Trump just won. Hey, I know I'm going to be going back to Africa. It's going to ship me back home. Just joking. I ain't going nowhere. Trump 2024.
And I was so fucking confused. I saw the video about money and I was like, maybe she's one of those people who thinks that like all lives matter is like actual equality and she's just blind to things. And I don't think that's okay, obviously. But like being one of those like I don't see color type people who are just like ill-informed and ignorant but have good intentions. But no, she is just a full-blown fucking Trump-loving Republican, and I don't understand. I don't get it. How can you sit here and be like, men are bad, rich men are horrible, men start wars, all they want is money, they're so greedy, and then you vote for Trump? What? Pardon? I don't understand. I don't get it. I'm confused. I don't even know what to say to this because I don't understand how she can hold both of these beliefs. Like, I truly just, like, don't see where the crossover is. I can't even fathom it to, like, I can't make it piece together in my brain to even make a commentary about it because I don't get it. So if any of you can figure out how the fuck you can say all of this and then also vote for Trump, I would love to hear because I don't understand. This woman needs to do so much reflecting. Like, she needs to sit down and have a good, hard think and understand and realize that they're not gonna choose her, right? You know, like defending your oppressors does not mean they're going to love you. Like, these Trump supporting white supremacists that this woman is defending, they will so quickly throw her under the bus. She is an immigrant. She's a black immigrant. They would deport her like that if they were able. They would, it doesn't matter who she voted for. They do not give a fuck. They don't care. It's not really benefiting her to be in this position. Like, I just don't understand. I understand that ignorance is bliss, right? And I do understand that when it comes to people who are of a minority or oppressed group, that it is easier to defend your oppressor and side with them than to acknowledge that you are being hurt. I think that obviously there is some sort of power in being like, no, I'm not oppressed. I'm not oppressed. I'm doing well. I can have everything that they can have. I am not different. I'm not treated different. Because as soon as you believe that you are being treated differently, it like makes you feel kind of hopeless, right? Like I understand that being a victim can feel very hopeless and it can be very upsetting. So I understand when people don't want to acknowledge that because it is uncomfortable and they don't want to deal with that. And I don't think that's the right thing to do because it doesn't actually help you. Like it doesn't make a difference. It does not change the reality. However, like if that's what you want to do and that is going to make you feel better about your life, then I can't stop you. However, there's a difference between quietly doing that to like make yourself feel better versus like yelling about it on the internet and spreading misinformation and actively empowering racist people. Yeah, there is a difference between not acknowledging that you are a victim versus actively yelling about how you aren't a victim and no other people are victims either. Because the latter is doing a lot of harm. The first is doing an injustice to yourself. It is doing a disservice to yourself and harming yourself. The latter is hurting a lot of people, and I just don't think that's okay. You know, sit, reflect, and realize what you are doing and that you don't speak on behalf of Black Americans. Like you just don't do that. So that is this woman. What a fun time that was. I hope you all enjoyed that. Before we go, I realized I forgot to mention, but would love to mention, you can now buy this little kiwi plushie from Makeship until the 21st of June. I love it so much. I love them so much. So please do not miss out because it is limited and at the 21st of June, it'll be gone and gone forever. So don't miss out. While you're down there also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, comment, all that good stuff. And a huge thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons. Eden, Amelia, Rain Remaining, Mossy Moose, Bingo Bango, Who Ate My Mango, Kiarum, Bug Loves Cats, Kojo, The Beebs, Tess, Bree, Chastity, Beckett, Prismatic Petey, Sushi Kawaii, Phil the Duck, River, Queen Glimmer, Ella, Mr. Noodle, Radsack, Knitting Menace, Chris, Ellie, Ikazel, Alexis, and Nevea. I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah.